Imagine this. A green light pulses at the end of a dock, across the black water of Long Island Sound. You are a man standing on your own lawn, in the dark, at 3 in the morning. Your hands are in the pockets of a pink suit you didn't buy for yourself. Your house, a tacky, enormous imitation of a French chateau, is lit up behind you like a carnival that forgot to close. Every weekend, hundreds of strangers swim in your pool, drink your champagne, crash their cars into your hedges, and leave without knowing your name. They call you Mr. Nobody. They call you a bootlegger, a killer, a German spy. You never correct them, because the name they don't know doesn't matter. The only name that matters is hers. And she is on the other side of that water, married to someone else, living inside the green light you've been staring at for 5 years. This is how Fitzgerald introduces us not to a man, but to a machine, a human engine built entirely out of longing. And the question at the heart of this book, buried beneath the champagne bubbles and the silk shirts and the yellow Rolls Royce, is not whether Jay Gatsby will win the girl. It is a far more unsettling question, one that Fitzgerald refuses to let you escape. What if he already has everything he ever wanted, and it still isn't enough? The Great Gatsby is famously taught as the great American novel, a portrait of the Jazz Age, a critique of wealth and class. But this framing is a trap. It allows you to hold the book at arm's length, to treat it as a historical artifact about people with obsolete problems. You tell yourself, I am not chasing a married woman across class lines in 1922. I am not throwing parties for strangers. I am not Nick Carraway, seduced by a world I claim to despise. But Fitzgerald is not writing about 1922. He is writing about the structure of desire itself. And if you believe you are immune to his diagnosis, you have already failed the test he is administering. Here's the paradox Fitzgerald hands you on the first page, disguised as a father's advice to a son. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. It sounds like tolerance. It sounds like humility. But by the final chapter, you realize Nick Carraway has been lying to you from the very first sentence. This book is not an exercise in withholding judgment. It is an autopsy of judgment itself. Fitzgerald is not asking you to sympathize with Gatsby. He is asking you to recognize that you are already living inside Gatsby's dream, and that the dream is a coffin lined with gold leaf. Consider what Gatsby actually accumulates. Not love, not even Daisy Buchanan, really. He accumulates proof. He buys a mansion directly across the bay from hers, so that every night he can stand at the edge of his property and stretch his arms toward the visible evidence that she exists. He collects shirts, dozens, hundreds, in linen and silk and flannel, and throws them at her feet like offerings at an altar. He collects Nick Carraway, not as a friend, but as a witness. Gatsby's tragedy is not that he fails to win Daisy. His tragedy is that winning her does nothing. The moment she finally touches his shirts and weeps, the spell should be broken. The grail should be achieved. Instead, Fitzgerald writes, there must have been moments even that afternoon when Daisy tumbled short of his dreams, not through her own fault, but because of the colossal vitality of his illusion. This is the central mystery the book hands you, wrapped in green light and broken glass. Why is it that obtaining the thing you wanted most can feel exactly like losing it forever? Fitzgerald is not describing unrequited love. He is describing the architecture of the modern soul. You have felt this. You have refreshed an inbox waiting for a name to appear, and when it finally appeared, you felt nothing. You have worked toward a title, a salary, a house, a relationship, and discovered that arrival is a kind of extinction. The goal vanishes the moment you touch it. And so you set another goal, further away, across a wider bay. You invent a new green light. Gatsby invented his. And Fitzgerald, with surgical precision, refuses to let you believe you are any different. This book is not a key to a locked door in your mind. It is the door itself, and when you walk through it, you will not find Daisy Buchanan waiting on the other side. You will find yourself alone in the dark, reaching toward a light that has just been switched off. If this unraveling of the American dream's darkest machinery already has you questioning the green lights in your own life, subscribe now, because in our next video, we dissect the hidden wound Fitzgerald diagnosed that you've been carrying since childhood. You have been taught your entire life that wanting is the engine of living. That dissatisfaction is merely a signal you haven't yet arrived. That the right job, the right partner, the right postal code will finally quiet the static in your chest. This is not a belief you arrived at accidentally. It is the operating system of an entire civilization. And Fitzgerald, writing in 1924, diagnosed its fatal glitch a full century before you felt it humming beneath your own ribcage. The hidden problem is not greed. It is not vulgarity, nor social climbing, nor even the vast inequality that separates East Egg from West Egg. These are symptoms. The disease itself is something Fitzgerald calls the service of a vast, vulgar, and meretricious beauty. And the word that breaks the case open is meretricious. It shares a root with meretrix, the Latin word for prostitute. Something attractive, but fundamentally fake. Something that promises intimacy, but delivers transaction. Something that gleams precisely because it is for sale. Gatsby does not love Daisy Buchanan. He loves what Daisy represents, the invisible certification that he has finally escaped James Gatz of North Dakota, the 17-year-old boy who borrowed a rowboat and stole a man's destiny along with his name. Daisy is not a person to Gatsby. She is a credential. When Nick tells him, "You can't repeat the past," Gatsby replies with genuine bewilderment. Can't repeat the past? Why, of course you can. And here is the hidden problem, laid bare in 7 words. Gatsby believes the past is a destination you can purchase a ticket to. Fitzgerald is not describing romantic obsession. He is describing the logical endpoint of a culture that has convinced itself that every human problem has a material solution. You feel lonely? Buy a house large enough to hold 500 strangers. You feel worthless? Accumulate enough silk shirts to make the woman who rejected you weep. You feel like a nobody? Invent a new biography, complete with Oxford accents and war medals, and the phrase "old sport" repeated until it sounds like truth. The American dream does not promise happiness. It promises the appearance of happiness, which is far easier to mass produce. This is the philosophical link Fitzgerald forges between Gatsby and every reader who has ever picked up this slender novel. He connects Gatsby's particular pathology to a broader psychological phenomenon the psychologist Carl Jung would later term projection. We do not fall in love with people. We fall in love with the unconscious content we have loaded onto them, the unmet needs, the unfinished business, the version of ourselves we hope their acceptance will finally authenticate. Gatsby looked at Daisy Buchanan and saw not a woman, but a green light. A goal, a finish line, a receipt for a life he had been trying to purchase since he was 17 years old. And you do the same thing every single day with far less self-awareness. That promotion you're chasing, it is not a job. It is a daisy. That house renovation you're obsessing over, that body transformation, that follower count, that acceptance letter, that engagement ring, you have loaded onto each of them the promise of permanent arrival. You have told yourself, once I have this, I will finally feel like the person I've always pretended to be. But the person you are pretending to be does not exist. And the thing you are chasing cannot certify you, because it is itself empty. Fitzgerald understood this with brutal clarity. Her voice is full of money, Gatsby says of Daisy. And Nick realizes in that moment the source of her infinite allure. That was the inexhaustible charm that rose and fell in it, the jingle of it, the symbol's song of it, high in a white palace, the king's daughter, the golden girl. Daisy is not desirable despite her wealth. She is desirable because of it. And so Gatsby's pursuit is not love. It is a worship ritual directed at a system that has spent his entire life telling him he is not enough. The system created the wound. Then it created the salve and priced it just high enough that he would spend his entire life trying to afford it. This is the diagnosis Fitzgerald delivers, and it implicates you directly. You have been trained since birth to confuse longing with lack, to believe that the ache in your chest is a compass pointing towards something external that will complete you. But what if the ache is not a compass at all? What if it is the sound of the system congratulating itself on another successful infection? What if the green light is not a destination, but a decoy? Fitzgerald is not moralizing. He is not telling you to stop wanting. He is showing you the architecture of your own desire so clearly that you can no longer unsee it. And once you see it, the question becomes unbearable. If the thing you are chasing cannot save you, why are you still chasing it? Gatsby never asked this question. And that is why, by the middle of the novel, you already know he is a dead man walking. The only mystery is how long it will take for the rest of the world to catch up. You do not throw yourself in front of a speeding car. This is not how the American dream kills you. Instead, you die the way Jay Gatsby dies, alone in a swimming pool, on an inflatable mattress, waiting for a phone call that will never come. The bullet that tears through his chest is fired by a grieving cuckold, yes. But the real weapon has been aimed at him since the moment he kissed Daisy Buchanan for the first time, 5 years earlier, under the autumn stars of Louisville. That kiss, Fitzgerald writes, was the incarnation of his dream, and then he had wedded his unutterable visions to her perishable breath. This is the contract Gatsby signed, not a marriage certificate, a death warrant. The consequences the book traces are not confined to 1922. They are not confined to Long Island, or to the wealthy, or even to the Americans Fitzgerald claimed to be writing about. They are the consequences of a world that has mistaken the map for the territory, and they are unfolding right now inside the architecture of your own life. Consider the Valley of Ashes. This is the industrial wasteland between West Egg and New York City, a landscape of gray dunes and faded advertisements where the poor come to be slowly buried by the residue of the rich. And presiding over it, looming above the dumping grounds and the desperate tenements, is the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg, a gigantic billboard left to decay, its blue irises peeling, its spectacles faded, its gaze vacant and eternal. Fitzgerald describes him as a forgotten oculist whose advertisement has long outlived its purpose. But the eyes remain, watching, judging nothing, certifying nothing. An absent God staring down at a world that has stopped believing it is seen. This is what the American dream produces when left to operate without restraint. Not prosperity, but ash. Not mobility, but entrapment. George Wilson, the mechanic whose wife Tom Buchanan is sleeping with, lives in this valley. He is the novel's invisible man, hardworking, honest, invisible. He loves his wife. He believes in God. He begs Tom for the $10 required to buy a car and resell it, a tiny transaction that might lift his family out of the gray. Tom refuses. George Wilson spends the rest of the novel being slowly buried, and by the end, he is so desperate for a sign, for any evidence that his suffering is witnessed, that he stares up at the billboard and whispers, "You can't fool God." But the eyes do not answer, because they are not God. They are commerce. They are the hollow face of a system that watches human beings disintegrate and sells them, even in their disintegration, the fantasy that someone is watching. This is the consequence Fitzgerald has been tracking all along. The dream does not fail because Gatsby is unlucky. It fails because the dream itself is designed to be unreachable. The green light must always recede. The girl must always be just across the bay. The acceptance letter, the promotion, the renovation, the ring, they must arrive slightly damaged, slightly late, slightly less fulfilling than you imagined, so that you can begin chasing the next one. This is not a bug in the system. It is the feature. A satisfied consumer is a retired consumer. and a retired consumer has no value. You feel this friction every time you achieve something you worked years to attain and feel, instead of relief, a strange and hollow deflation. You feel it when you scroll through the curated lives of strangers and sense, beneath the envy, a quieter suspicion. They are faking it too. You feel it when you lie awake at 3 a.m, staring at the ceiling, asking yourself, is this all there is? Fitzgerald answered that question nearly a century ago. Yes, this is all there is. And you will spend your entire life trying not to admit it. The stakes are not economic. They are existential. Gatsby does not lose Daisy to Tom Buchanan. He loses her to the very structure of his longing. The moment she becomes real, the moment she touches his shirts and cries, the moment she admits she loved Tom once, the moment her voice loses its jingle and becomes merely human, Gatsby's dream collapses. He spent 5 years building a cathedral around a woman. And when she finally walked inside, she was not tall enough to touch the ceiling. This is what the book refuses to let you look away from. The problem is not that you will fail to get what you want. The problem is that you might succeed and discover that success is not an arrival, but an eviction. You have been renting space in a future self that does not exist. And when you finally reach the address, you will find the building has already been demolished. Gatsby never reaches this realization. He floats in his pool, waiting for the phone to ring, believing until his last conscious moment that Daisy is about to tell him she is leaving Tom. But the phone does not ring. And the man who floats above him, George Wilson, does not know that Gatsby has already been dead for years. He is just completing the paperwork. Fitzgerald hands you this ending like a mirror. He does not ask you to pity Gatsby. He asks you to recognize the shape of your own hands, reaching toward your own green light. And then he asks the question that echoes across the decades. Unanswered, unanswerable, unbearable. What are you waiting for a phone call to tell you? Fitzgerald does not offer you an escape route. This is the first and most brutal truth of his prescription. He will not tell you how to stop reaching for green lights, because he does not believe you can. He will not give you a 7-step framework for detaching from material longing, because he suspects that longing is not a habit you acquired. It is a bone in your skeleton. But he does offer something far more radical, buried in the least glamorous character in the novel, a figure so easy to overlook that most readers forget he exists at all. His name is Nick Carraway, and he is the only person in this story who walks away alive. Not physically alive. Gatsby dies, Wilson dies, Myrtle dies, and even Jordan Baker fades into rumor and engagement announcements. But Nick survives in the way that matters most. He recovers his capacity to see clearly. He arrives in New York as a man infected by the same virus as everyone else. He is enchanted by wealth, seduced by proximity to power, desperate for the validation of people he secretly despises. He tells himself he is withholding judgment. In truth, he is simply renting an opinion until he can afford his own. But something shifts in Nick across the summer of 1922. It is not a dramatic conversion. There is no single chapter where he renounces materialism and moves to a cabin in the woods. Instead, Fitzgerald charts something far more subtle and far more achievable: the slow, painful reassembly of an inner compass. Watch Nick carefully. He is the only character who refuses to use other people as props. He does not ask Daisy to certify his worth. He does not project onto Jordan an identity she cannot sustain. He does not attempt to purchase, seduce, or manipulate anyone into reflecting back an image of himself he wishes were true. He simply observes, and in that observation, he begins to notice the gap between what people claim to be and what they actually are. Tom Buchanan preaches about the decline of civilization while conducting an affair in full view of his wife. Daisy Buchanan murmurs about sophistication while wearing a string of pearls worth $350,000. Gatsby invented an entire biography and then forgot it was fiction. Nick does not judge them. He does not reform them. He does not even confront them. He simply withdraws his belief from their currency. And in doing so, he becomes solvent. This is Fitzgerald's prescription, embedded not in a sermon, but in a character arc, so quiet you might miss it. The path to resolution is not the eradication of longing. It is the redirection of attention away from the objects of longing and toward the machinery of longing itself. Nick stops asking, "How do I get what they have?" He starts asking, "Why do I believe that having what they have would change anything?" And the moment he asks that question, the spell breaks. Fitzgerald encodes this breakthrough in a single devastating image. In the novel's penultimate chapter, Nick stands on the lawn of Gatsby's mansion. Now abandoned, the party's ended, the guests vanished. He looks across the water at the green light on Daisy's dock, and he realizes something Gatsby never could. Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgastic future that year by year recedes before us. It eluded us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms farther, and one fine morning he stops. He does not finish the sentence. Because there is no finish, there is no morning. The sentence itself is the trap. Nick's liberation is not that he stops believing in futures. It is that he stops believing the future is a destination rather than a direction. He will never arrive. None of us will. But he no longer mistakes the light for the shore. He knows now that the light is simply a lamp on a dock, wired to a switch in someone else's house, illuminating nothing but its own small circle of water. This is the counterintuitive strategy Fitzgerald smuggles into his novel of broken hearts and broken dreams. He is not asking you to want less. He is asking you to see more. He is not demanding you renounce ambition. He is inviting you to examine the source of that ambition and ask whether it belongs to you or to the system that raised you. He is not prescribing poverty or asceticism or the rejection of beauty. He is prescribing lucidity. Gatsby could not become lucid. His dream required the maintenance of illusion, and illusion requires the suspension of sight. But Nick Carraway learns to look, and in looking, he learns to leave. He returns to the Midwest, not because the Midwest is morally superior, but because he has recovered the ability to distinguish his own voice from the chorus of sirens singing him toward the rocks. This is the secret the book has been guarding. Not a method for winning Daisy, not a formula for becoming Gatsby, but something far more valuable: the permission to stop running. You have spent your entire life stretching your arms toward a light that was never meant to be reached. What if you simply lowered your arms? What if you turned around and walked back into your own house, the one you built, on the land you actually own? What if the phone never rings and you discover you no longer need it to? Fitzgerald does not answer these questions. He simply hands them to you, wrapped in Nick Carraway's quiet voice, and trusts you to recognize that you have been asking the wrong ones all along. You have been lied to about what this novel means. For nearly a century, The Great Gatsby has been presented to students as a cautionary tale about the corrupting power of wealth, the emptiness of excess, the moral decay of the Jazz Age. This interpretation is not incorrect. It is simply irrelevant. It allows you to close the book, shake your head at those foolish people in their foolish hats, and return to your life unchanged. It allows you to believe that Gatsby's tragedy is that he pursued the wrong woman, or accumulated wealth through criminal means, or failed to understand that Daisy was never going to call. It allows you to miss the sentence that Fitzgerald plants like a landmine on the final page, waiting a century for you to step on it. So we beat on, boats against the current, worn back ceaselessly into the past. This is not a lament. It is a diagnosis of the human condition, so precise it draws blood. You have read this sentence as poetry. You have underlined it, memorized it, quoted it in graduation speeches and wedding toasts. But you have not allowed yourself to feel its full weight. Because to feel it is to recognize that Fitzgerald is not writing about Jay Gatsby. He is writing about you. You beat on. You wake up, Check your phone. Scroll through the curated lives of strangers. Measure your existence against their highlights. You work, consume, aspire, acquire. You tell yourself that the next promotion, the next relationship, the next zip code will finally quiet the static. You stretch your arms toward the green light, convinced that this time, the current will carry you forward instead of dragging you back. But the current is not external. It is internal. You are not being pulled backward by circumstance. You are being pulled backward by the structure of desire itself. Every object you obtain reveals itself, upon arrival, to be merely another memory of wanting. Every future you chase collapses into a past you are trying to revise. Gatsby wanted to repeat the summer of 1917. You want to repeat the moment before you realize that acquisition does not satisfy. And you will spend your entire life trying to return to an innocence you never actually possessed. This is the book's ultimate truth, the revelation that ties every section together into a single unbearable knot. The American dream is not a promise of happiness. It is a promise of amnesia. It promises that if you work hard enough, accumulate enough, perform enough, you will finally forget the boy from North Dakota who borrowed a rowboat and never returned it. You will forget that your father's approval was conditional. You will forget that the person who rejected you chose someone else. You will forget that you were ever insufficient, invisible, unworthy. You will build a mansion so large that the past cannot find the door. But the past does not need a door. It is already inside you. It is the current beneath your boat. It is the hand on the tiller, steering you not toward the future, but toward the shore you already left. Gatsby did not want Daisy. He wanted the 17-year-old version of himself who believed that Daisy was possible. And you do not want the promotion, the house, the ring, the follower count. You want the version of yourself who has not yet discovered that these things cannot certify you. Fitzgerald offers no comfort here. He does not tell you how to escape the current. He does not promise that lucidity will set you free. Nick Carraway sees clearly, and what does he gain? He loses Gatsby. He loses Jordan. He loses his faith in the East, in wealth, in the entire architecture of longing that brought him to New York. He returns to the Midwest, not triumphant, but evacuated. He is not healed. He is merely no longer deceived. And yet this novel has survived a century because embedded within its despair is something that looks, against all evidence, like grace, not the grace of salvation, the grace of recognition. Fitzgerald writes, "It eluded us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms farther." He is not mocking Gatsby. He is not mocking you. He is witnessing the human refusal to stop believing that the light means something, even after you have learned it is just a bulb on a dock. This is not foolishness. It is the engine of art, of love, of every cathedral ever built by people who knew God was not inside, but built it anyway. The book's final gift is not a solution. It is a question, posed so quietly you almost miss it beneath the roar of Gatsby's parties and the crack of the pistol shot. What if the green light was never meant to be reached? What if its purpose is not to guide you to shore, but to illuminate the water between you and everything you have lost? What if the ache is not a failure of attainment, but a proof of depth, evidence that you are capable of longing for something beyond the transactional calculus of the world that raised you? Gatsby could not hold this paradox. He needed Daisy to be the incarnation of his dream, and when she proved to be merely human, his dream had nowhere to go. But you are not Gatsby. You are still reading. You are still asking. You are still standing on the lawn at midnight, watching a light that does not know you exist, refusing to look away. This is the paradigm shift Fitzgerald intends. Not the renunciation of longing, the reorientation of it. You cannot stop beating against the current. You are human. But you can stop believing that the opposite shore is where you will finally be saved. You can learn to find the current itself, the ceaseless, backward-pulling motion of memory and desire, not as an obstacle to overcome, but as the very substance of your life. You can stop waiting for the phone to ring. You can lower your arms. You can walk back into your own house, the one you built on the land you actually own, and discover that you have been standing on solid ground the entire time. The green light pulses at the end of the dock. It does not pulse for you. It never did. But you are the one seeing it. You are the one translating its pulse into longing, into language, into a story you tell yourself about who you might become. And that story, not the light, not the shore, not the girl, is the only thing you have ever truly possessed. Fitzgerald knew this. He wrote the novel as a man who had been Gatsby, who had chased his own daisy across continents and decades, who had achieved fame and fortune and watched them crumble into ash. He died believing himself a failure, his masterpiece forgotten, his obituaries reducing him to a relic of an era already fading. He did not live to see the green light become an American icon. He did not live to hear his sentences quoted by people who had never read the book, but he wrote the ending anyway. Not for himself, for you. Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgastic future that year by year recedes before us. It eluded us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms farther, and one fine morning, he never finished the sentence. He didn't need to. You already know how it ends. You already know it never ends. And still, you beat on.